Wait, you have a TV?
No. I just like to read the TV guide. Read the TV guide. You don't need a TV.
Television addict! Television addict! Television addict!
Hello, everybody. Welcome to TV Guidance Counselor. I am Ken Reed, your TV Guidance Counselor, here each and every week to discuss classic television with back issues of TV Guide from my personal collection as the gateway into our collective past viewing choices. And occasionally, it's not TV Guide. Like this week, it's the TV Times, a UK magazine that is a similar function. I believe... Actually, I know, because I was in the UK last summer for the first time in like 10 years. I used to live there, if you don't know. Why would you? But they do have a TV Guide there now, though I believe it's unaffiliated. But for years, it was TV Guide, TV Times, Radio Times, 4 channels, 2 magazines. We discuss it here in this episode. My guest this week is the fantastic Scottish television presenter, radio personality, stand-up comedian, Julia Sutherland. Just a great, great person. Really enjoy her work, and it was great to get to chat to her. As you will hear, she has a pretty amazing connection with television that is ancestral in many ways. And this last week we went to Canada. This week we go to Scotland. 2 countries I've never physically been to, but I get to talk to people from them because we're in a global pandemic lockdown, and everything is virtual now, which is I'm kind of embracing. It's kind of cool. So, if you have a guest, or if you yourself are a notable person who would like to be on the show, and you are not in my house, which if you are, please let me... Actually, you know what? Don't let me know if you're in my house. I'd rather not know that you've been here the whole time. But if you want to record an episode, let me know. Or if you have guest suggestions of people you'd like me to try to get on the show, please email me at tvguidancecounselor@gmail.com or ken@ikenreed.com, or you can tweet at me at Kenneth W. Reed, R-E-I-D, spelled the Scottish way, yes, or at TV Guidance, and same on Instagram and all that jazz and razzmatazz and pizzazzy. None of those are things, but you can find me. I'm easy to find. So let me know. And I've got a bunch of great suggestions from people, and I have and am actively trying to get all the people you suggested on the show using the powers of persuasion that are greatly diminishing in my old age. But that's a whole different story. It is weirdly stormy here in the Boston area here in the United States, and my beloved backyard tent has sadly fallen victim to the massive thunderstorms. If you've heard about the tent, I built a giant cabin tent that had 2 rooms and closets, and it was like an adult fort, basically. It was like an adult pillow fort. But sadly, that era in my life is over. I've grown out of time to put away the childish things. Anyway, you're going to love this episode. Julie is great, so please sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of TV Guidance Counselor, the Lockdown Remote Quarantine Edition, with my guest, Julia Sutherland.
TV is my friend, and it has been always there for me in time of need.
Julia Sutherland, how are you?
The magic of the internet. I am good, Ken. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, it's funny how a global pandemic has really opened up my show to other countries.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's actually been quite similar for us. I work as I'm a radio and TV producer and a presenter, and as well as being a stand-up comedian. But we've been making panel shows for the BBC, comedy panel shows, as well as stand-up shows for the Stand Comedy Club. We've been doing that, a live stream show. It's been quite weird, but the kind of acts that you can get when they don't have to leave their house,
yeah,
really ups the ante. So it's been fantastic. We've had some great people on because they're like, yeah, sure, I don't need to go anywhere. I don't need to step outside my house. I can just come and chat to you for an hour, and that's it. It makes it much easier for everyone. So in some ways, yeah, it's been kind of nice.
It is sort of weird. Before we get into the TV Times, this is sort of relevant in that I feel like it's sort of in some ways we're reverting back to all being listeners of radio like it's the 1940s or something.
yeah, and that's fine by me. The only thing is on the flip side of that, there's been all this sort of Zoom and Skype chatting going on, and whereby you would talk to somebody just on the phone before. Now somehow we feel like we must see each other's faces and we must do video calls, and I can't bear it.
I hate it.
Oh, and nobody's looking at you; they're looking at themselves, because of course they are, and you can't actually look the person anyway, because you'd have to look at the camera and then you look like a psychopath.
Yeah.
So it's horrendous. Absolutely. I hate that. But yeah, the fact that content wise, there's lots of great new podcasts and what have you coming out with, lots to listen to when we go out on our government sanctioned walk, although our restrictions are lifting here now. So,
well, you guys did it right. You're not making it worse actively, as we seem to be doing mostly in the southern part of our country. But I'm a snob.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just, we just look in despair, but I mean, our government, certainly old Bojo, hasn't exactly done a great job of it. We're, highest death toll behind you guys. And really per head, I don't think the statistics are very good and really don't pay.
It's depressing. So that's why I enjoy looking back at a nostalgia view of what we did in the past. Did I lose you?
Yeah, my recording stopped as well, though. I don't know. Something must have glitched.
Yeah, we do.
We must have been hit by lightning or something.
We may have been hit by lightning. We have weird thunderstorms going on here, so I'll blame our weather.
Okay, yeah.
All right. I'll do an edit and I'll mention that we dropped out, so we can we'll peel back the curtain. So we're back. We're back.
Okay, we're back. Okay.
We were disparaging the government, so I think they may have just shut us down.
That's probably what it was. I criticized Boris Johnson and they were like, nope, absolutely not having any of that.
Just picturing like a you ever see the game Battleship where you have the little pegs? I'm picturing like one of those on his desk and like little red lights go off if someone disparages him, and he just like presses a button and it like shuts off their communication. Absolutely. Good. Well, that's us. But it's I was talking about radio, and when I lived in the UK, and obviously, as you just mentioned, you do a radio panel show, and the sort of tradition of non-music radio entertainment never really went away in the UK, whereas in the US that died in the 60s. I know. And it's a weird thing, because actually looking back on the time that we're going to look at from television, we're only a few channels. It's nowhere near what it's like today. We just didn't really have the same choice. So everybody just sort of had to listen to the same thing. And there's something kind of we've really lost, I think. And it's something that I think during this pandemic that we've really realized, is that having those communal experiences where we're all seeing, watching, or, doing something at the same time. And those are things that we really need, I think, as a species, as a society, to sort of pull together to feel part of something bigger than ourselves. So, sporting events being a classic one, every week people going to a certain place to be all together and watch a game, and then be able to talk about it, and they were there, and the same thing goes for television. When television and radio, that was, people watched the same things because they didn't have much choice, and then it was a shared, we had the same shared cultural history, which now we don't so much, because people don't even watch the same. Well, they might watch the same programs, but they don't watch them at the same time. Yeah, there's an awareness we all had. So even internationally, where it's kind of funny in that I've been doing the show, I don't know, 6-7 years, something like that. But one of the things I used to always say is that it's about how we're all alone together growing up, which is now what I hear people talk about with the pandemic. And it's this shared experience of, there were shows on that I didn't watch, but I knew everything about them and could probably talk about them. It's funny, isn't it? Even stuff that you didn't watch, like the soap operas, you still knew who all the main characters were. Yeah. You still knew, you still were very much aware of, the Queen Vic, being the pub in EastEnders, and Dirty Den, and all these characters. They were almost like, friends of your parents. Especially in the UK, like when I lived there, even when I lived there, which was in the late 90s, early 2000s, because it's so much smaller, it was easier even then for something to be like a nationwide fame, I guess. So you would have really awful reality shows, but everybody knew who everyone was on it. Like, it was easier to get a higher profile, I guess. Yeah, absolutely. I tell you what, speaking of which, I had an experience before lockdown where
And I'm like, I've not really spoken about this, but I got asked by the producers of Britain's Got Talent to go on that show. And it's a funny thing of, I didn't really watch the show. So I didn't really think about it. I didn't really think about what to expect so much. And it was a very weird experience, which was a bit of a car crash in the end in a very hilarious way. But because I didn't watch it, whereas, when I was a child, you would have had no choice but to watch, Opportunity Knocks or something like that. You would have, that was it. Whereas there's too many of them now. We're sort of overwhelmed.
For better or worse, really, as a fellow stand-up, it used to be here that a TV spot made you as a career. Your life was kind of split into before that and after that. If you were on the Tonight Show, now you were a comedian for a living, even if you weren't before. And
yeah, absolutely.
Now it almost nobody it's so niche almost. A show like James Corden's show here only gets about 100,000 viewers.
Really?
Yeah. So you have, at 1:30 in the morning, if someone catches your 5 minutes, half watching it, there are people who listen to podcasts, like millions of people who listen to podcasts for hours. So it's a very different thing. And we recently here in Boston on America's Got Talent had a local comic go on, and it was a train wreck, and she panicked. She clearly, what she had done was she put part of her set from the middle of her longer set into her audition thing. And so it had a callback that she didn't do the initial bit of.
Oh no.
So the callback was the punchline, and they were like, what?
Well, I'll tell you what happened to me. So I had been, for this whole time, I didn't really watch the show. The producer got in touch, said, would you like to do this? And I was like, well, and I thought, you know what? Either it goes well, I do well on it, and that's good. So that's got to be good. It helps, profile and everything. Yeah. Or if it goes badly, I'll get 10 new minutes of material. Do you know what I mean? So
you're a true stand-up.
Yeah, exactly. And you're sort of almost hoping that it goes badly. So in advance, they ask you to send, write out, it's just a 3-minute set, 4-minute set, which you know is going to get absolutely hacked down. So you can't have any callbacks or anything like that in there. And they send it back and forth. And I was quite surprised at the process, because they really go through it, and they've got the gag writer for Ant and Dec, who are two of the presenters. I think it's, what's her name? Tyra Banks, is that her name?
Tyra Banks. Yeah.
She does that role standing on stage. So they do that over here. They're a couple of presenters, very popular.
Ant and Dec's Saturday Night Takeaway?
Saturday Night Takeaway. Yeah, that's right. yeah, it's still on. It keeps winning awards. People cannot get enough of them. They just love them. They're a couple of cheeky chappies. I don't know.
So they were on, was it Grange Hill? Was that the show they were on?
No, Biker Grove.
Biker Grove, that's right. So they were on like an equivalent of, for my American or Canadian listeners, like Degrassi High, or like a more
not
serious,
even that sophisticated
Saved by the Bell, maybe like a less glamorous Saved by the Bell. And then I think the first thing they hosted was maybe Pop Idol, I think.
Possibly. I don't know. I've got big chunks missing because I actually lived in America for 7 years, so I've missed quite a lot of cultural reference points that my peers talk about, and a Pop Idol is one of them. I don't think I was in the country for that one. I taught snowboarding in Colorado, actually.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so I missed some things here and there, and I've got weird things, like I still think of the temperature in Fahrenheit, and everybody's like, "Why are you so weird?" I want to know what it is in Fahrenheit. But I'd picked that up from when I was in Vail.
What years were you in Vail? Was it like late 90s or?
Yeah, it was 99, I think, until 2006. Yeah, or 98 maybe, 98. Yeah.
So the true extreme sports era here in the U.S.
Yeah, it was a good time. Yeah. I had a brilliant time. I love it. I feel like it's my second home. But
what's weird is that you almost overlap exactly when I lived in the UK.
Oh, really? So did we swap? We can't ever be in the same country at the same time. It's too much.
It'll be like Time Cop. We just got some sort of black hole. Yeah, because I remember seeing them on that, and then they had a Saturday morning show with Kat Deely.
That's right, yes.
Watch.
And they also they were pop stars. I mean, I say pop stars. That song, "Let's Get Ready to Rumble."
Oh God, yes.
So they were, because they're as their characters from Biker Groves, which was PJ and Duncan, I think, were the name of the characters.
Yes, that's right.
So, and that's that's stuck in the nation's psyche. So they do Britain's Got Talent, and they also do I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. Do you have that over in America?
Yeah, that we call that Celebrity
in the jungle.
Celebrity Survivor.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So they host that as well. But so they're, I mean, like they're huge. And as I said, they just keep every year they win the award for best, presenters. People just can't get enough of them. And so I'm sending my 4 minutes in, whatever, my set, and they put it through their writers, Ant and Dec's writers, and they send you back some suggested gags. And I go, okay, I'll maybe change the last little bit to make it more suitable for prime time, because I'm used to doing comedy clubs and what have you. My stuff's not really usually that. It's not totally, PG.
Right. It's not exactly Northern Men's Club, but it's not.
No, it's not. No,
children's party.
But, no, exactly. So I'm thinking, well, I'll take my lead from them. They know what they're talking about and sort of what have you. But I've got my first line. I go, my name's Julia. I'm from Glasgow. I just turned 40. 3 years ago, and that's it, and that's me, and I sort of make a joke about my age, and all that. So that's the whole thing. So I'm about to go on, and it's all very surreal. It's been a really long day, and you do all the shots beforehand of you sitting chatting to other people. It's all very set up, and then what they call the hero shot, which it was the best thing, Ken. You sit and they have this really ultra sort of slow-mo camera, and you just sort of turn and look at it, and it's those amazing shots you get just before you go on stage.
Yes,
they're really really glamorous ones. So you do that, and then you do ones of you supposedly walking on stage, but they're not actually walking on stage. You're like underneath the stage with a whole bunch of props and things around you.
It would be the shot that played Eminem's "Lose Yourself."
Right.
While you were getting it, it'd be like that slow mo kind of thing where you walk on. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, oh yeah, and I was like, this is great. I like this. I love performing. I love being on stage. So and then get ready to go on stage, and they take me backstage, and I've got to do the little chat with Ant and Dec before I go on, and there's the act that's on before me is a singing dog. Right, and I'm thinking to myself, well, goodness me, this is showbiz, isn't it? I'm following a singing dog. This is marvelous.
I always wanted to do vaudeville.
Exactly. And I'm sort of questioning, is this really, was this a great idea? And I think, just remember your set. My name is Julia. I'm from Glasgow. Just turned 40 3 years ago. And then you're in, right? That's it. So I go and Dec say, right, come on, Julia. And they're Geordies. Right? I can't do a Geordie accent, even though it says I can in my Spotlight profile. But anyway, don't tell anyone.
To Americans, they wouldn't notice.
Well, exactly. They wouldn't know. So I go to meet them, and they're like, oh, how are you? And I'm like, oh gosh, are you? And it was so weird, to be suddenly actually stood in front of them, because I've seen them on the telly since I was a child, when they were child stars. And I'm like, is it actually
this is decades. You? They're huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So surreal. So I'm like, have you got a dog coming in to join you?
Yes, it's my singing dog that goes in the background. People are used to it since lockdown. Yeah. He goes, did someone mention the UK singing dog?
Yeah, I can sing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cute. But yeah, so the singing dog's finishing up, and Ant and Dec, and I say, right, okay, hi, and I gosh, are you real? I can't. This seems so surreal. And he says, yes, go on, pinch me, and I sort of like pinched his cheek, and so I'm like, what am I doing? And I go, right, it's time to go on. So I go on, and I walk onto the stage, and all the lights are on, and it's the London Palladium, right? So it's 2,000 people. It's a big gig. It's probably the biggest gig of my, career. Mm-hmm. I've done theatres that have been nearly that big before, but there's something about this, and it's very, very, so much history.
Yeah, it's an esteemed place. It's like Carnegie Hall almost. It's got
exactly. Yeah, it's got that vibe. So I'm going out there, and I'm like, oh my goodness, and the lights are on me, and I look in front of me, and there's Simon Cowell, there's Amanda Holden, Alicia Dixon, and David Walliams. Now I don't know if you know any of those people apart from Simon Cowell.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You know. Okay.
Yep. David Walliams was Little Britain and
yes,
those various things.
Yes.
Amanda Holden. Where do I know
Amanda Holden? She's an actress as well. Sort of better known in, I'd say, the 90s. And it's just what sort of a weird choice. How there's always a sort of random judge, and you're like, why are you?
Yeah.
Why are you here? So she's a bit like that, but she's been on it for quite a long time, so she's pretty well established as a judge. And then Alicia Dixon was a singer. She was in a garage band, and very bolshy, kind of strong female character. So anyway, so we got up there, and Simon goes, "Oh, hello. What's your name? Where are you from?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm Julia. I'm from Glasgow." And I'm going, I really need to think about this. I'm beginning my set. I said, okay, I need to. Oh, it's fine. And then Alicia says to me, "And how old are you, Julia?" And I'm thinking, oh no, that's my first gag. And because in my mind, I was thinking, I was told I had to do exactly what I'd prepared, and I was thinking, oh, but what I should have done was just do the gag there, just say, oh, I just turned 40 3 years ago. And then I'd have got a laugh and it would have, I would have set myself up. But I thought, I can't do that. I mustn't break the rules if I was supposed to just do my set when, So then I said, and then this is the most out of character thing ever. I go, she says, how old are you, Julia? And I go, a lady never tells. Like some kind of Victorian prude, right? Which is so not me. And also, like, I don't care. I'm so proud of, well, not proud, but I don't care about my age. It's really, it's like a thing in my set and in my material. And so I'm thinking, why did I say that? And she goes, no, come on, you own your age, girl. You own your age. Who cares? Like, tell us your age. How old are you? And she's like, it's nothing to be ashamed of, your age. Tell us your age. Yeah. And all the audience are going, yeah, woo, cheering and clapping. Alicia, who's like making this big feminist cri de coeur, And I'm like, oh my God. I was like, I'm 43. And she was like, there you go. You own it. Okay, right. It's time for you to do your set. The lights go out. And I'm thinking, oh no, this is over now already before I've even started.
Yeah.
And so then I do my, I did my name is Julia, Glasgow, just turned 40. I just turned 40 3 years ago, and it's just nothing, and it just like,
it's totally blown. Yeah, because
I've blown it.
You could have improvised your response to them, or you sit there, but like, because you've agreed this is the set that I'm doing.
And I'm like, guys, why are you setting me up to feel like this? Like everyone must have known like that they would ask those questions, just because I'm not used to I hadn't really watched the show. It wasn't so ingrained in my head of course that would be what would happen. So yeah, and then I just had to sort of keep going, and I really tried, but it was just and because I'd sort of got into a bit of an argument with Alicia, it felt like a confrontation. Right. It sort of set a bad just a bad vibe. So, it was awful. So then at the end, it was like, it was like from Simon. And then David Williams was very nice. He said, I think you've got a future in comedy. And I was like, well, thank God for that. Because it's like,
I have a past in comedy as well.
I know. And I felt like saying, I did not ask to come on this show. You asked me to come and do this. Why am I here? So it was a bit of a funny one, but I'm hoping that it'll form the basis of, a new set, maybe even an Edinburgh show. I followed a singing dog being the title of the show.
The cynic in me and the person who knows how reality TV is created wonders if they did that on purpose.
Yeah, I don't know. They got into this weird thing at the end where between Simon and David, it was just excruciating, and it was just patronizing. It was awful. Anyway,
yeah. Well, let's wash that bad taste away with classic television.
Talk about television from the 80s. Yeah.
Well, so the interesting thing, and I've said this on the show before for my listeners who aren't in the UK, is that even though you have less channels, you have more magazines that tell you what's on it, because you have Radio Times, which is the BBC stuff. So the BBC 1 and 2, and I guess 3 and 4 now. I think 3's gone. And the radio stuff. And then the TV Times, which is just ITV and Channel 4.
Just the commercial channels, yeah. So the BBC are funded. So it's a unique. I think PBS is the same in the US, isn't it? As
it's
BBC?
Similar, yeah. It's there's partially government funded. PBS is like a weird series of like franchise. It's a little bit different, but yeah, that's the closest thing.
Well, it's very unique the way the BBC is funded, because we pay a license fee to the BBC, and that's for everything, for radio, for TV, for all the online stuff. Anything that we get from the BBC is paid for through the license fee, which is about 111 quid or something a year. Right. It's not really a lot.
Unless you're visually impaired, then you get a discount.
Yeah, you get 50% off, which makes a lot of sense.
Totally worth it.
Yeah. Or if you've got a black and white TV, you pay less. I know that's weird. People still have black and white TVs. But so and funnily enough, I know it's when we first got in touch, like my childhood was quite dominated by TV guides, and particularly the Radio Times, because my dad collects them. And so we had, like, in the basement of our house, where we also had a radio studio, but that's another story. We had a room devoted to his collection of Radio Times, and he also collected the TV Times, which is the one we've got today. And then he would, if we ever went on holiday abroad, he would make sure he would get all the TV guides for that place. Stuff? Yeah, the local ones.
That's amazing. So he wrote a book about him, you said, I think, right?
Yes, he wrote a book about the Radio Times specifically. And yeah, I mean, he lectured as well on radio and television. He's written books about radio and TV as well. So yeah, I'm very much steeped in this stuff. growing up. But weirdly, so my dad worked in television, and at the time that we are talking about here, so 1986, when I was 10, he presented, he did continuity on STV, which was like the Scottish ITV, the third channel. And he was in Vision. So he used to do the links between the shows and read the news. So he sat behind a desk with the sort of logo behind him, and did all that stuff. So everybody knew my dad, and it was normal for me. My dad was on TV, and I just thought everybody's dad was on TV. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Didn't occur to me that was a special thing. So, and before that, he'd been a radio DJ. And so growing up, we sort of always had other people that were well known in the house, and that was, so I'm never that impressed with people who were on telly, because like my dad was on telly.
Yeah, big deal.
He's a big nerd. Yeah. So
I love your dad.
Deal. I know you should speak to him actually. He's got plenty to say about television. He could talk your ear off.
So I don't know if they still do it live, but those linking continuity things, sometimes they're in camera and sometimes they're not, but it's like coming up next and after this and here's the weather and the news. But I think would he still do them live at that time? Yeah,
they do. And actually, he's just retired from his job. He then worked for the BBC doing that. I mean, it was out of Vision, but it was actually what they call him, station controller. Oh, no, director. So they actually sit in a room where they make sure that actually everything is broadcast, and they coordinate the opt-out, because sometimes we have network shows, which are shows that everyone in the UK sees, and then sometimes we have the opt-out, which is the Scottish programming that's on BBC One or BBC Two. I think it would usually just be BBC Two, maybe. I'm not entirely sure, but so he would do that and then do live, for example, next, Pulses are racing on Holby City, that sort of thing. Those kind of links. So he was doing that up until very, very recently.
But if you wanted to, if you were home and you wanted to act up, like say you were having a party or friends over and you weren't supposed to, you would know how much time you had before he got home. You're like,
he was still on air. Yeah, still there. I know. It used to freak me out. Yeah. He would sometimes be on, if I was in a strange place and somebody had the TV on, and then if I was standing too close to it, sometimes my dad's voice would sort of suddenly appear. Be quite frightening, quite discombobulating.
You're like, did everybody hear that, or was it just me?
yeah. Is he following me? But he. But then weirdly, he worked in he worked for the Cable Authority, regulating television, and actually when we were children, this was a very this took me back, this experience of going through the guide and picking out things, because we used to have to do that. We weren't allowed to watch much TV. They didn't think it was good for us, my parents. So
I guess you'd know.
I know. So only allowed to watch, pick one thing a week to watch, that we were allowed to watch in the evening. One or maybe two things if there's something special on. But we did watch, when we came home from school, we watched Neighbours and Home and Away. And I don't know if you remember that from, they're Australian soaps.
Home and Away, I absolutely loved.
Yeah. Well, some people were one or the other. I was all over both of them. And they were, I don't know why there's such a strong following for these two Australian soaps in the UK, but they, Kylie Minogue was in Neighbours, with
Natalie
Jason Donovan.
Imbruglia.
Yeah, Natalie Imbruglia was in, I think she was in Home and Away.
I think she was Home and Away, yeah.
And Danny Minogue was in Home and Away, I think, Kylie's sister. But these were the communal experiences that we were talking about. That thing that...
Mailman must be here.
What's your dog's name?
We have 3, so that's Larry. He's the baby.
He's happy as Larry.
Yeah. And then we have Petey, who's the old man, and then the middle guy is Ted.
Oh, that's nice.
Yep.
3 old men. They're three old men.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yep. But those soaps were aimed at
So everybody watched
teens.
them. The kids watched them in particular. So that was the thing you talked about the next day in the playground, was what happened on Neighbours the day before. And they were on twice during the day, so you could see the previous day's one at lunchtime, and then the new one was on in the evening, after school.
And on the weekends, would they do the omnibuses where they do the whole weeks in a marathon? I remember them doing that sometimes.
Possibly. I'm not sure. I never watched an omnibus because I watched religiously. I never had to do that. But we're mad about soaps in the UK. Absolutely mad about them.
Well, those two in particular, they Well, again, I think, like a show like EastEnders, which I believe started in radio initially, like a lot of the soaps did here, when television programming started, they just did what they were already doing on radio, which were soaps. So it's like a weird, really long tradition. But Home and Away and Neighbors, I wonder if there's that sort of exotic wish fulfillment, because they're like seeing beachside Australia is probably the closest you're going to get to like Beverly Hills 90210 or something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was as glamorous as that to us, and they just look, and they had high schools with lockers and they had those cool uniforms, everything just seemed better. And yeah, of course, the sunshine as well. So those were absolute staples of things that we watched. But apart from that, I did not watch a lot of TV. I'll be honest with you. I was more of a reader. I read like every single day. I was always had my head in a book. So
do you think that was because sort of some of the mystique was taken away, or just because you weren't allowed and you didn't really miss it?
Yeah, partly wasn't really allowed because I did like TV. But just wasn't really allowed. But I was sort of also kind of lost in my own imagination a lot. And I love reading because, you create the entire world inside your head. And I loved that. I always got really, really sad when I finished a book because it was sort of like losing all these characters, and that's why it's so nice to get, I love series, and now I love crime fiction, that's my obsession. So it's nice to get a series, like Harlan Coben or Patricia Cornwell or something, where it's the same character that you can follow, you don't lose them at the end of the book, it keeps going.
Yeah,
so
there's that consistency. Did you ever read, side note, did you ever read any Jim Thompson stuff?
No, what was Jim Thompson?
Jim Thompson was an American crime writer, noir-y writer in like the 40s and 50s. He wrote The Grifters and The Killer Inside Me and these just sort of hard-boiled, hard-nosed sort of crime novels that I absolutely love.
Oh, it sounds like right up my street. I've taken a note of that.
They're great. Yeah, a few of them have been made into movies. One, I think it was Truffaut, made a French movie based on his movie Population 801, I think, which was about like a small town sheriff who was corrupt. And The Grifters, obviously, The Getaway was one of his books that was made into a movie twice. But yeah, I just love his stuff. They're very dark, though.
All right. Okay. Well, that's all right. I like dark. I like dark. Yeah.
They don't translate. They never make them as dark as the books in the movies, which I think is why he hasn't been adapted as much. Although he did a movie with Stanley Kubrick called The Killers.
Oh, okay.
That he
Stanley
wrote.
Kubrick's a big fan of
dark,
blood and
awful
guts.
things. Yeah. A horrible man.
Yeah, a very horrible man.
But speaking
Let's
of which,
say about him the bear.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Speaking of which, right as soon as I open this, there is like a 3-page article about all the people who've played Poirot.
Right. Yeah, I saw that. And interestingly, did I see today? My brain's mixing up what I've read today and what I've read
from 1986.
Yeah, what was like?
Ian Holm.
Was she saying that Poirot? She got bored of the character and like actually wrote about his death? Was that in here?
I think it was in here. And weirdly, the Poirot that they're showcasing is Ian Holm, who just died recently. But none of these are. Is it David Suchet who is sort of the famous Poirot?
Yeah.
But they have Albert Finney, they have Peter Ustinov. That like he's not even really mentioned very much.
No, I know. It's funny, isn't it? I love actually that sort of show. Do you like Poirot and like Murder, She Wrote? I loved Murder, She Wrote when I was younger.
I do. It's weirdly safe.
Yes, it's a whodunit. What's his name? Oh no, Just One More Thing. Peter, what's his name?
Columbo.
Oh Columbo, yeah. I love that. And like you say, it is safe and comfortable because you know exactly what to expect. And it's a nice wee whodunit. And you know the characters. And there's murder. I still, like a bit of murder.
It's like cute murder, though. It's weird. It's like
homely.
Murder. I wondered where that should, because if you look at a show like Homicide or like Law and Order, it's the difference, I think, and this is just my theory, is autopsies.
Right.
Once we actually started seeing them like examining the body, it got really gruesome. Because in all those like Murder, She Wrote and Poirot, it's like, oh, this book is ajar. That means that it was this person, It's,
but that's because it was a time before forensics. That
Yes.
if you think about it, that's really the difference. And I am sort of obsessed with that kind of show, and I watched every episode of Criminal Minds. I don't have a law degree, but I feel like I'm like a qualified profiler because I watched I actually watched more hours of Criminal Minds than I ever actually studied at university.
Right.
And that is absolutely true. Well, there's a lot of them though, to be fair. But I loved all that kind of thing. And actually, when I was younger, I wanted to work as a forensic scientist. I wanted to work for the police doing that. But and I did work experience with the police, which is so weird when you see what I ended up doing. But
right.
It makes no sense.
Or maybe it's
at all.
not. Maybe it makes all the sense in the world.
I know. I think the detective shows and my detective books that I read, I love the idea of solving crimes. But it actually, when I went to the lab, it was like one person feeding stuff into a computer, and it was really not that exciting. And it turns out that there's only like one job in the whole country, or maybe 3 jobs in the whole of the country. So to get one of those jobs is incredibly difficult. And actually, it wasn't quite as exciting and glamorous as I thought it was going to be,
So ironically, to get one of those jobs, you'd have to murder somebody.
Wow.
To
I think
open
being
up
a serial
the role.
killer. I am obsessed with serial killer. I think I've been more obsessed than before it was even popular to be into serial killers, and I've loved shows like Dexter, and I listen to my favorite murder podcast. Absolutely love that.
Karen's a good friend. She's been on this show.
She's fantastic. I love her.
I've discussed this recently. It's a weirdly female obsession.
Yeah.
And Karen put it to me that basically, we have a danger of being murdered. So
yes.
we want to.
Well, that's it. Do you know the comedian Jenna Friedman?
Yes. Yep.
New York comedian. Yeah, she does a bit about this, and she says, we watch it for research to, make sure we don't end up being a victim. It's like that's exactly it. But I think it's also like, well, it's just a fascination, really, with the darker side of the human psyche. And I don't know why that women might be so interested in. Maybe women are just a bit more interested in other people. Men are maybe a little bit more interested in seeing themselves, and that's an uncomfortable way to see themselves.
There's an empathy piece, but also I think, most, not all, but most mass murderers and serial killers are male as well.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of like, what is going on there? What do you, like, you can't understand it personally as yourself because it is that extra step other. So maybe that makes it a little more fascinating. But it's sort of seeing the rise of the anti-hero serial killer is sort of a strange phenomenon that happened as we were growing up. That was not the case. I think when they started making Hannibal Lecter a hero. Yeah,
it is a strange thing. But, so much of television, I think now, everyone's a villain. It's like, have you watched Succession? Did you watch that on?
Yes.
I think
Nobody
HBO?
is a good person and everyone's awful.
Everyone is awful. And yet, like Kieran Culkin's character in particular, Roman, is just awful, but I love him. I think he's hilarious. I think it's just the writing is tremendous, and they have such great lines, and as a comic, you're like, oh, what a peach.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's just scenery you can shoot. It used to be like an anti-hero was a good person who did the wrong thing for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And now it's just a bad person doing the wrong thing for the wrong reasons.
I know. Why are we so fascinated with these terrible, terrible people? But
I wonder, and I hope that it's not the case, but I wonder if some of it's sort of like a weird cathartic wish fulfillment for some people. Like,
well,
oh man, I'd love to be able to do that.
Yeah, I suppose it's a safe way of exploring dark feelings and thoughts. I don't know.
Also want to mention my favorite Hannibal Lecter, who I believe is from Scotland, Brian Cox.
Oh, yes. And he's also in Succession.
Yes.
He's, he plays the patriarch and plays Logan Roy. Absolutely.
Oh, man.
He's fantastic.
Terrifying Hannibal Lecter, because he seems really like he would kill you, whereas Anthony Hopkins, not so much.
Yes, I know. There's something just too... Hopkins. Anyway.
He's too actory. He's but Brian Cox feels like he could beat the hell out of you if he wanted
He's
to.
authentic. Yeah. Authentically frightening, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. What's your all-time favorite, either not cop show, but like detective show or murder show? murder show. I know they're not called murder shows.
I honestly watch any show like that, like CSI, all the CSIs. But yeah, Criminal Minds was sort of my favorite for a while. I don't know. I love the psychological element. I love the fact that it was profiling. But yeah, anything, I would watch anything like Law and Order, all the American ones, love them. We had Taggart here, and it's a sort of a bit of a joke that anyone who's an actor, has ever been an actor, any intention of wanting to be an actor, has been in Taggart.
Yes.
Either as, even if it's just as a body or as an extra. I've been in Taggart like 3 times. My dad was in Taggart on the telly in one of the scenes.
Oh, weird. And so Taggart is a Scottish detective, right?
Yes, really grumpy. He's dead now, sadly. Yes, but the show sort of lives on. I don't know if it's still on. I think it's maybe not on anymore. But it was. And the other good thing about it was watching it as a Scot was it shot in Glasgow, and so you would recognise your city. When you were watching, go, ooh, is that street? Is that you trying to work out where they were, and a lot of it was filmed around about where I grew up, because it was sort of like a suburb, leafy, big Victorian houses. So great set, great locations for filming. And yeah, it was kind of cool to see your own city in that way.
Glasgow, where my great-grandparents came from.
Really?
Yeah, although I've never been to Scotland, and someday I'd like to.
Oh, well, hopefully that will be possible.
Yes.
Not too distant future.
They allow us in there. But it is great. Like, we had a show called Spencer for Hire here, which was a detective show that they shot in Boston in the 80s. And it was, I love watching them now, because if I want to watch what Boston was like when I was growing up in 1986, I can put it on and I'm like, there is exactly where I used to go. That is it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
That's Taggart for me as well. Absolutely. It was funny actually, during the lockdown, they had filmed. There was a really great series on the iPlayer. That's a BBC's. It was on the BBC, but then it goes on the iPlayer, so it's like Netflix
all their
for BBC
available.
shows.
Because you paid that license, and technically you have access to everything they ever made.
Well, you don't actually, because stuff goes up on the iPlayer for a certain length of time. It depends on what rights they've negotiated and with things. So quite often there's older stuff that can go up, but newer stuff isn't on for. Anyway, it's boring. It's to do with contracts, but they had this show on, and it was called The Nest, and it was really excellent. It had Martin Compson in it, and it was during the lockdown when we couldn't go out. It was shot in Glasgow back when people were out and were in bars, and it was like watching it, kind of going, oh, do you remember when we used to go out to that bar? Do you remember, like, just seeing the city like being normal, and people bustling around in it? It was sort of nostalgic. We were nostalgic for 3 months ago.
It was an inadvertent fantasy element.
Yeah, it was so weird. It was so weird to watch.
It's very strange.
But it was really, really good. It was a thriller as well. It was actually incredibly well written and was great. I don't know if it's still on there. If you can get it.
How old is it? Is it fairly recent?
Yeah, no, it's like, it was on in March. It was just made this year. Yeah.
I'll have to check it out. What's the really dark David Tennant show where he actually gets to do his own accent? Broadchurch. Is it Broadchurch?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And I kind of missed that. I got a friend of mine that was in that, though. Yeah. And in fact, I think he might have been the bad guy. I don't know, though, because I never watched it. But yes, everyone raves about that. And that Olivia Colman was in it, of course.
Yes.
That was a real, that brought her to everyone's attention, I think. So, apparently it's fantastic.
I love Tennant. He's the best.
I liked him as Doctor Who. Did you like him as Doctor Who?
I did. He was so, like, he had that element of being dangerously, unpredictably crazy. Mm-hmm. Which I think,
but he had that sort of sense of humor that's, he had that sort of twinkle in his eye that worked. I quite liked him as Doctor Who. I'm not like a Whovian, but
I checked out around Matt Smith. I was like, I can't take it anymore.
No, okay.
Yeah, because I was like, you can only...
When they get younger than you, it's like, no, I'm sorry, I can't accept this.
I've aged out of this. But also, like the stakes would be so high every series that it was like, all right, we saved the entire universe and recreated everything from the Big Bang 3 times now, so there's really no more stakes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like hard
I think we're done.
Yeah, I think we've finished here. One weird thing in this issue, so we're looking at August 23rd to the 29th, 1986, but after the Poirot article, there's an article just about all the people who've been hanged.
Bizarre?
Because it's sort of about I think the Salem witch trials. There's a new adaptation on of I think it's The Crucible, but I forget if it says. Which oddly, as I sit, I am about 10 miles from Salem, Mass, where these things happened.
Really?
And the Gallows Hill is a tourist attraction, which is real weird.
Oh, people are strange. I mean, I can't say. Oh, people are so morbid and freaky when I like to listen to murders, described in great detail. So what's the difference?
You're not visiting the sites though.
No, absolutely not.
And weirdly, on the Gallows Hill, they have these stones all around, and each of them has carved into them things people said before they were hanged.
Jesus.
So it's may God have mercy on your souls. I am innocent. And it's and people are taking their pictures, and it's real weird. It's
very strange.
Salem's a whole thing. But it's very strange to see in this, TV guide, essentially. It's here's a list of people who've been at the gallows.
Yeah. Bizarre events that led to the gallows. That's a fun fact.
Yeah. And then the very next thing is an ad for buying a hideous princess dye.
Which, can I just say, was never fashionable. It says fashion round the clock, and it is a sort of weird length of mid-calf, straight up and down. It looks like an old-fashioned dressing gown with a white collar and a black bow.
It's a bathrobe.
Buttons all the way. Yeah, it looks like what we would call a house coat.
Yeah.
And it says it's got elegant Dallas Day shoulders, which is a combination of dinner. Which, by the way, speaking of which, have you watched the new Dynasty?
No, is it good?
Or do you say Dynasty?
Dynasty, I would say,
Dynasty, yeah, Dynasty. It is glorious. It is so ridiculous. I absolutely love it. It's just... you sit down, switch your brain off, and just revel in the ridiculous storylines and the the fantastic fashion. And I think everyone in it does a great job. Particularly the girl, what's her name? Elizabeth something or other, plays Fallon. She's Fallon Carrington. She's gloriously awful. She's just brilliant. That's one of my guilty pleasures.
I can't believe I haven't seen the term Dallasty before this moment.
Neither have I until I saw it there. But that's because, and I would never have. These are the things you always flick past. For some reason, in TV guides, they were always trying to flog you the most dreadful items of clothing, elasticated waist pants for old gentlemen, and those shoes that look like they're sort of surgical shoes,
orthopedic looking
orthopedic
shoes.
yeah, that's what I mean, not surgical. What's a surgical shoe, Julia? I don't know.
Yeah, it does. It'll take off bunions. You just wear them around and go,
that's a thing.
Or weird shell suits for old people.
Yeah, and also then weird gadgets as well. You would sometimes get a little brochure slipped inside the TV guide of all sorts of weird and wonderful things that you could buy, especially around about Christmas time.
Here's an alarm clock that chops things.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of yeah.
I can't believe you've lived your life so far without one of these. Absolutely essential. Mm-hmm.
It's a belt with a radio in it. Actually, I probably would.
That sounds quite good.
Yeah. Speaking of Dynasty, Joan Collins gave me the greatest no to be on my show ever, which I've talked about before, but it was so worth it to get this email. And it said, first of all, she called herself Dame Collins, which is incorrect. So I don't know who wrote the email for her, but it said, this sounds like publicity for publicity's sake, and Dame Collins doesn't do such things.
She probably wrote it herself.
And I was like, this is perfect. This is perfect.
That is great. She's quite the character, but she was a real sort of fixture of the 80s, wasn't she?
Oh, yeah. And her sister, Jackie Collins, who wrote all those trashy beach novels.
Who seemed more fun, yeah.
Yes. She seemed to take herself much less seriously.
If you ever read one of her books, she definitely didn't. Yeah.
I was watching on one of our streaming services here, for some bizarre reason, has all of the old Joan Rivers talk shows from the 80s.
Oh, I love Joan Rivers.
It was amazing. It was a daily talk show, and they're all there. And there's an episode where the guests are Jackie Collins and Little Richard.
Oh my God. Can you imagine?
Oh my God. They're on the panel together. And it is so hilarious. It's insane.
Where did you find this? Where did you see this?
It's on a streaming app here called, what is it? It's not IMDb TV. Oh, it's Roku. It's on Roku here.
I've never heard of it.
It's one of the streaming services like Hulu or one of
Oh,
those things
okay,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But there's just some amazing stuff, and she had just written a book about like heavy metal bands and she's like, I partied with them for 6 months, and we did so much cocaine. And I'm like, what? And Little Richard's like, I love cocaine. It's like this insane, and it was on at like 10 in the morning.
Oh my God,
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
It's fantastic. So I'm like, Jackie knows what's up.
Oh, the golden age of
It truly
television.
is.
Yeah.
So did you go through and pick?
I did, and it was quite a trip down memory lane. But even though I didn't watch much TV, there were a few things that sort of stood out for me. I mean, I know that we're supposed to be watching in the evening, but
it doesn't matter.
no, but on the Saturday, so in the morning, the Wide Awake Club was something that we would always watch. We're wide awake. What is it? Happy and we're wide awake. Anyway, on that, they had this game. There was Timmy Mallet was on it, and he played a game called Mallet's Mallet.
Okay.
And it was like a word association game where two kids opposite each other, and he had this massive foam mallet, and you had to say, play word association, and if you stumbled or whatever, he would hit you over the head with a mallet, which I don't think you'd get away with these days. And so then the winner won, I think they won a mallet or a trophy, and then the loser got a big plaster on their head from where they'd been hit by Mallet's mallet. It was brilliant.
So there's a long tradition in the UK of like kids shows that were like a 3 or 4 hour block on a Saturday, and they would basically do like wraparound segments and show longer shows and cartoons in between. So this was one of them. And
they still do that. Yeah,
it's still on. I didn't even know that they still do
no,
that.
not this show, but they still do. That's still kind of the format. And they have, because there's quite often some comedians have come through doing stuff like that. But then after the Wide Awake Club, there was Get Fresh, which was hosted, one of the hosts was Gaz Top. And I actually, the first time I was ever on TV was on a show hosted by Gaz Top, which was called The Fun Bus. And it was on a cable channel, and I was on it aged, I want to say 8 or 9.
Wow.
And I was being interviewed about this. We'd been part of this thing called the Doomsday Project, where it was a sort of almost like a kind of census, and they were saving it onto these big laser discs. And it was like,
can I just mention that's the coolest name of a project to be a part of when you're 8 years old?
The Doomsday. I know. In fact, I should really Google that because I can't. So I can tell you exactly when it was. The Dooms, because I lived on this island. My gran lived on this island. Hang on. I can never remember how old I was for anything. I can't remember my age at any point in time of my experience. I have to literally go and work out the years and then count back to work out how old I was. But the Doomsday Project, it was a partnership between Acorn Computers, Philips, Logica and the BBC with some funding from the EU, and it was to mark the 900th anniversary of the original Doomsday Book, which is an 11th century census of England. Wow, every day is a school day. And so that was between 1984 and 1986. It was published in 86. So it would have been this year that we're looking at, that when I was on the TV show with Gaz Top talking about having been on doing this. We used to go and stay on this little island called Lismore, which is 10 miles long and 2 miles wide, long and thin, and had a population of 170 people, just 170. Huh. And me and my brother went to school there for a summer term, like 2 or 3 years in a row. And there was only 6 children in the whole school, in the whole primary school.
Jeez.
Yeah, and we were part of the Doomsday Project. So we sort of went up in a helicopter and we helped compile all this history and stuff for this project. And so I was on this show to talk about it with Gaz Top. I remember what I was wearing. It was like a velour tracksuit, a maroon velour tracksuit. And
Did you buy it in TV Guide?
Well, no, I could have done. But it was the absolute height of fashion. I felt so cool. It had been right this time, this age, and I told my first joke on TV, Ken. It was my first foray into stand-up.
Do you remember what the joke was?
Yeah, of course I do. It was the wide-mouthed frog joke. Do you know the wide-mouthed frog joke?
No.
Okay. Do I remember it? Let me try and remember it. It goes something along the lines of, but it's a visual one. So it's like the wide-mouthed frog's walking through the jungle, and he wants to find out about the other animals. And the first animal that he comes across is the giraffe. And he says, and you put your fingers in the corner of your mouth and go, "Hi, I'm a wide-mouthed frog and I eat flies. Who are you and what do you eat? Right? And he goes, I'm a giraffe and I eat the leaves from the trees. Right. Anyway, so he goes around the jungle asking all the questions of the animals. It goes on for quite a bit, Ken. I'll spare you the details. But eventually he finds a tiger and he says, I'm a wide-mouthed frog and I eat flies. What do you eat? And he says, I eat wide-mouthed frogs. And he goes, oh, there's not very many of those around here. They're like a tiny little mouth. So that was the joke. I know it wasn't that good, but it killed at the time.
About murder, essentially.
Yeah, it's about frog murder. So yeah, that was the first time I told a joke. So that was quite that reminded me of that. Just seeing his name there of my first ever experience, and then actually it was a brilliant morning of TV because after that there was the Terrahawks.
Jerry Anderson.
So it's Jerry Anderson, puppets, absolutely terrifying puppets.
Yes.
And it was sort of
super
sci-fi.
marionation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, really quite frightening to watch. It's the sort of thing nowadays, if you woke up, put it on with a hangover, you'd be like, oh no, it would just set you right off. But it's
if people saw,
it was a classic.
Team America World Police, that is based on sort of the Jerry Anderson puppets.
So that would have been a good run. The Wide Awake Club, Get Fresh, and then the Terrahawks would have filled that morning. But obviously, that's not what I would watch now.
No. I mean, I would
not
watch that
a
now.
morning person. Yeah, well, I would, but I wouldn't be up at that time on a Saturday if I could possibly avoid it. Now that my son's old enough not to get me up that early.
Right.
So, but I think probably what I would watch though is 7:30 to 8:15 Five Alive, which was a comedy sketch show.
Okay.
And that, like, to me, growing up, sketch shows were probably one of the few places you would see women doing comedy.
That's a good point.
And that's sort of where, like, that's what I fell in love with. I fell in love with Absolutely, which was on the radio first and then was on TV.
Oh, was that Morwenna Banks was on that?
Yes.
Yeah. She's hilarious.
It's like absolute classic to this day, like some of my favorite sketches. And Five Alive would have been a sketch show, and I actually ended up being in a sketch group as well. And again, it's sort of the place where you saw women being funny on TV, like French and Saunders, Dawn French and Jennifer Saunders, absolutely brilliant sketch show driven by them, or Victoria Wood.
Yes.
And those were probably the women that sort of subconsciously influenced me in terms of comedy when I was younger. So that's probably what I would choose to maybe watch now, which was on in the evening.
It's funny that you mentioned that too, because I think of like women-driven sketch comedy shows, and we had the Carol Burnett show in the 60s and 70s here, but then really didn't get another one until Tracy Ullman had her own sketch show here in the late 80s.
She's great, yeah.
But
that's crazy.
The UK,
length of time.
It was a huge amount of time, and it seems like you had a lot more women on sketch shows. To your point, like Carolyn Ahern and even Emma Thompson was in sketch shows with Robbie Coltrane. Like it
really good, really good, talented women.
Yeah.
Who very much held their own and were, an integral part of the success of, the sketch shows. So.
And The Young Ones, which is one of my favorite shows of all time, and kind of the reason I moved to the UK, was really? was co-written by a woman, and she wrote all the good stuff.
Yeah. Not so many women in that. I definitely couldn't relate to The Young Ones as much, but it was slightly gross. But
it's very boy-centric, but written by a woman, weirdly.
Yes, and Brick Mail, obviously brilliant. But
what's your all-time favorite sketch show?
I think it probably is Absolutely, and so it was such a big part. I had the cassette tape of their radio show, and I used to like listen to the sketches and just memorize them. Mm-hmm. And then when I don't judge me, but I went to boarding school for a year on scholarship when I was for like sixth form or sixth year.
No judgment here.
Thank you. And I went on an academic scholarship. I'm not like rich kid, but. So my roommate also loved them, and so we used to do them together and act them out together, and I have very fond memories of that, because I didn't really have a lot of fun at that school, but me and that roommate had a lot of fun together. So that's probably my favourite. And then my sketch group, Endemic, we eventually ended up on this radio show, which was for sketch comedy, and we absolutely reformed for the show, and we supported them. So we performed at Oranmore in Glasgow, theatre in Glasgow, the same night. We were on before them, and we were on the same episode as them, and it was like
amazing.
Absolute dream come true. Yeah. So that's definitely was a real highlight, being able to share a stage with them. It was just so exciting. And they did some of their classic sketches, that I just love. I knew word for word. I was like mouthing along in the audience with some of the classic sketches. So it's brilliant.
But that's how, those of us that went into comedy, I feel like that's how we learned timing and structure and, inadvertently a lot of those things by sort of memorizing and mimiking those things.
Yeah. Yeah. And the first stand-up really that I guess resonated with me really was Eddie Izzard. Weirdly, I think maybe because he was different and he wasn't like a middle-aged guy wearing a suit and talking in a certain way. He was much more glamorous and exciting and interesting, and I was like, oh, wait a second. This is stand-up.
Yeah,
I could do that. I could get on board with that.
Can do it differently? Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so I had his VHS tapes, and again, new routines word for word and the timing and everything of it. So yeah, it is almost like training. It's like training the muscle, and,
but it's easy because you like it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's brilliant. So, yeah.
It's almost exactly the same thing when I talk to musician friends who are like, oh, I learned how to play guitar by kind of playing along with this record. It's almost the same exact thing. But
that is how you learn. Even when you when you're like, my son's learning to play the clarinet just now, and for his exam piece, he's working up to playing along with an accompaniment, and you have to be able to play with other people, and you have to be able to play, with the right timing for it to sound right. So yeah. It makes perfect sense to do that.
And now we can do that even in lockdown because we have all these things we can watch and listen to.
Oh, I know. Endless amounts. There's too much though. It's like, what should we watch? And you spend like the night just trying to choose something.
Which is kind of great about having so few choices in these because it makes you make a decision.
I know, it does. It forces you. And actually what I've got in front of me is not even the full choice. It's only really, it's only, the commercial channels, which is even better. It's like, that's why I say sometimes it's quite good being a vegetarian because it means that you're not overwhelmed with choice in a restaurant. You're like, right. Would you like a goat's cheese tart or would you like some risotto? There you go. That's your
sauteed
options.
Vegetables. Would you like that?
Yeah, exactly. No, thank you. Although it's getting much better these days, I have to say, thanks to vegans. Vegans have made it much easier to eat out.
Yes, for sure.
I don't know. It's weird. Weird how fashionable they are. Everyone hated us when I was vegetarian growing up. Vegans are cool now. Who knew?
That's the kind of, I feel like that of everything I liked growing up, where I'm like, oh, I used to read comic books and liked horror movies and comedy and everyone made fun of me. And now that's like the biggest thing ever. And it's like total, like dudes like that stuff.
Seems unfair, but at the same time, you're like, well, that's cool. I'm pleased.
I try to tell myself that.
Yeah. It's like Dungeons and Dragons, I think, is having a moment thanks to Stranger Things,
Oh, big time. Yeah, big time. So. That I never got into. I was like...
No, me either.
I used to have a bit
I was a loser, but I wasn't like that depth.
That's what I said. I used to do a bit about the hierarchy of nerdiness, and like it was like adult wrestling fans, insane clown posse fans, and then way underneath was role-playing games.
Yeah, totally. Thank God for them. They make us look good, It
was funny because comic book stores here, when I was growing up, they always sold Dungeons and Dragons stuff, but in the back room, almost like porno tapes.
Oh, really? They were ashamed.
Yeah, they're like, this is what really makes the money for us, but we don't want anyone to know we sell it.
Yeah. That is very funny.
It's very weird. But now people can freely admit that they like that stuff.
It's okay.
Sunday, to this day, is just like a wasteland in UK TV, isn't it?
Yeah, it kind of is. I mean, like, who watches TV like when it's on anymore? I don't. No. But yeah, that was another freaky thing that I saw on at 4:30 in the afternoon. The Campbells. So the Campbells was like what do you call it? Period drama, and I think it was about these Scots that were moved during the Highland clearances to Canada. I think that's what the story was. I don't really know, but I was in it. I was I was in it as a child, so probably around about this time. So it could have even been that episode. I was just an extra in it, but I had the whole costume and the wig and everything, and it was like 2 days of filming up in the hills of Scotland. So yeah, and I'd completely forgotten that I'd even done that, Ken. You know,
Wow.
like there's just some things in your life you just like space out, and I was like, the Campbells. That rings a bell. Oh yeah, I was in that.
I was in a costume drama set in Canada when I was a child.
Yeah, I did do a lot of weird things when I was a child because I was a bit of a bit dramatic. I was shy, but I loved drama and acting and that sort of thing. And I went to drama school at the weekends, so I did do a few things like that. And I did a radio play called, which was about the Highland clearances as well, called The Desperate Journey, which is a book by Kathleen Fiddler, and the BBC did a dramatisation of it, radio.
So this was people that was like the 1800s sort of people.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, you Google the Highland clearances.
Yeah.
It was a bad time.
Yeah, it sounds not great.
And yeah, the Scots were basically cleared off the land because the English landlords could make more money from sheep or stags for hunting so it was a bad time that people were like literally burned out of their houses. They set them on fire and they forced them out. But they offered them a new life in Canada, and that's why there's so many Scots over there, Nova Scotia, New Scotland, and so they came down to Glasgow and went out to Canada. Some stayed in Glasgow from the Highlands, but yeah, it was a pretty dark time for people living up there.
I mean, it strikes me as like a Scottish version of Little House on the Prairie, sort of.
Yeah, it had that. Like. It had a feel of that to it, but with sort of it was a bit sort of more grim.
Right, of course.
Yeah, it was a little bit more grim. So yeah, that popped up, and that reminded me of that.
There's a thing that would have fascinated me earlier that day. There's a thing called Out of School, and it's the sort of documentary series that's the writing of Spitting Image.
Oh yes, and do you know John Lloyd?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we know John quite well. We've worked with him in the past, and he's just like, what a great. You should get him as a guest on. Oh my God.
Oh, I'd love it.
I'm gonna pass him on to you. I think he would do it for you. Yeah. He is absolutely brilliant. And Spitting Image, they said they're bringing it back. They were supposed to be bringing it back like now, like this year or last year. But I haven't seen anything.
It's hard to parody the current. I don't know. I guess the 80s people probably thought that too. But for people listeners who don't know, Spitting Image was, if you've seen the Genesis Land of Confusion video, they're the latex puppets that were political cartoons. But it was
they were so grotesque. Yes, it was satire. It was true satire.
Yeah.
And they had these puppets, and they had like Margaret Thatcher, and then they had John Major, who was the grey man. So he was like all just grey. He was like no colour in him as his puppet. But they were
brutal. Like the parody was just so mean to them.
Mm-hmm. But people became more known sometimes for their Spitting Image character than for what real life,
right? Which SNL sort of did here, for like Sarah Palin. But I always forget that I don't know. I don't think they created the show, but they were head writers for a while. But Rob Grant and Doug Naylor, who created Red Dwarf, worked on Spitting Image.
Love Red Dwarf.
I love Red Dwarf so much.
That's a nerdy thing to admit to as well, though.
I used to have to unplug my cable and plug in an antenna so that I could get New Hampshire PBS on Tuesday nights and watch Red Dwarf.
Oh, well, you deserved it then if you went to all that effort.
I really earned it.
It was very funny. It was really well written, I think. I mean, I haven't watched it back, but I felt like it was at the time.
I have, and I liked it. And I liked the first series that returned recently, but I kind of dropped off. But as a kid, or even now, I find this stuff interesting. But seeing a show that was about the making of a show was just amazing.
Yeah. Well, somebody was talking about... no. Do you know what film we watched last night? We watched The Disaster Artist.
Oh, yeah.
And I find that quite fascinating because it's a film about the making of a film. Of course, it's like...
Tommy Wiseau.
Yes. And just what an unbelievably fascinating story that was. Have you seen it?
Oh, yeah. And the weirdest thing about Wiseau is he's a real guy, and I see him all the time when I'm in LA.
Do you?
And I did LA Comic Con last October, and he had a booth there, and he's like obsessed with one of my friends. And so we were walking by the booth, and she's like, "Oh my God, don't look, it's Tommy Wiseau." And he's like, "Hey." I'm like, how is this a real thing?
But do you not think for me, the story like almost made the world sparkle again for me?
Yes.
Because it's so incredible. And the fact that this guy in this day and age can still remain such a mystery. Like nobody knows how old he is. Nobody really knows where it came from, how he made his money, how somebody can pull that off.
Yeah.
And be so eccentric and to have done what he did, like, I just think it's beautiful. And like, I really do. I think it's, it just shows you the world can be crazy in a good way too, you know?
Yeah. It's like, sort of life affirming because there's a weird sincerity to the artifice.
Yeah. I love it. I absolutely loved it. You know, I loved him as a character. I mean, he's probably really difficult to be around, but, you know, conceptually,
yes.
I like the fact there's people like him in the world, you know, I like the fact that there's people, who can have that drive and you know, be that wacky.
Wouldn't want to live with him, but love that he exists.
Exactly. Same could be said for so many people.
Exactly.
But yeah, that really restored my faith in the good crazy in the world.
Anything else you had on there that night or the next day?
Well, I would maybe watch a bit of Winner Takes All, which was quiz show with Jimmy Tarbuck, just because I do quite like a quiz. We make a quiz show. Well, it's a sort of panel show. It's got quiz elements to it, and we made it. It's called The Good, the Bad, and the Unexpected, with comedians, and it is sort of a bit more of a vehicle for comedy, for stand-up comedy, really.
Yeah.
But there's also a quiz element of it. And the show we made before that was called Stop the Press, which really was a quiz. And writing, I really enjoy writing quiz questions and, you know, writing the scripts for that. There's sort of an art to it. So, excuse me. So now I would watch something like that with a different eye, you know, just from a production sense of what works and what makes a good, you know.
I love the panel show quiz show, which we don't have in America, and every time they've tried, it's completely failed. They tried to do a U.S. version of Nevermind the Buzzcocks, and Mark Maron was in the Mark Lamar role, which awful.
Makes perfect. Well, really?
On paper, it makes sense, but in practice, it was a disaster. Like, he was awful. And the Phil Jupitus spot was David Cross.
Right.
And
it's funny. I tell you what's really surreal. So I grew up watching Buzzcocks as well, and then I met Phil Jupitus actually a couple of years ago, and he came to see my Fringe show, and he sat in the front row, and it was very weird. Yeah. You know, like when you become friends with people that, you know. Oh, totally. You watched, on TV.
I mean, that's this show for me, is that every week I'm like, my birthday was recently, and I get, you know, texts from people I used to watch on TV, and I'm like, wow, what is this? No,
it's crazy. Yeah. And like the first stand-up I ever saw live was Dylan Moran, an Irish comedian. It was the year he won the Perry Award at the festival.
Him. Yeah.
Oh, I'd love him so much, and that was I was so lucky that was my first experience of live stand-up. And you know, and then a couple of years ago, I was hosting a show at the Stand. I was comparing, and he was headlining, and I was just like, it was like surreal to me to be, you know, literally introducing him onto the stage. It felt like this sort of everything come full circle.
I once drove down to Manhattan to see him. He was doing like a week at the Bowery Theater in New York. And I drove down 4 hours, saw the show and drove home. But it was so weird because the audience had no idea who he was. And they were like good-natured heckling him.
Oh, God.
Because it was a small theater, you know, maybe 100 seats, and it wasn't full. So, you know, he'd ask a rhetorical question and these people would answer. And he was like, and I normally absolutely hate that, but seeing him getting so mad about it was somehow like amazing.
Yeah.
Because he was like, he was like, of course. Like, he was just, and he made it funny, like, because I think he realized that these people just didn't know how to go to a comedy show.
Yeah. Oh, that's the worst, though. Heckling is the worst. Yeah. He also wrote and starred in a sitcom.
Black
which
Books.
Was called, yes. Did you see that?
I love Black Books.
Absolute genius. If you can find it anywhere, I would highly recommend seeking it out.
Yeah, and he was in a drama series before that with the woman from Four Weddings and a Funeral who died. Oh, what was it called? It was like a weird sort of country romantic comedy. And he got it right after the Perrier Award. It was called like Any Way You Want Me or something like that. Oh,
what was it? A film or a TV?
It was a TV series. And it was like, shot on film, single camera sort of dramedy. And he's great. He's great in it. And it's so weird because
How Do You Want Me?
How Do You Want Me?
Charlotte
That's
Coleman.
what it was. Yes.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And he's really like sweet and great in that. And I've never seen him do that again.
Yeah, no, I didn't see it. I just Googled it.
Yeah.
But I was curious because I was like, why have I never heard of this?
It's
but it was
pretty good.
in 1998 to 99. Okay, that's when I was in America. So there you go. That's where I missed that.
Yep. Something to watch in lockdown.
Another little black spot. Yeah, that's good. I'm going to have quite the list of things to read and watch.
Everyone leaves the show with homework. You're welcome.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's probably that. That's the 24th. We're really romping through this.
Yeah,
aren't we?
sorry. I don't want to keep you all night, so we'll burn.
No, don't worry. I maybe slightly ran out of steam getting further along.
Yeah.
But Well, what have you got? Have you got anything else of interest of that day?
No, there's kind of nothing there. I would have been really psyched about the spitting image thing, and then just kind of moved on. I remember when Sundays in the UK it was like snooker and like
it was rubbish.
It was the worst.
And it was the worst day as well because it was school the next day, so you just couldn't enjoy it. You were just like had this dread,
and everything was closed. Everything was closed. I was not used to that. Like everything's 24 hours and open on Sundays. And I'm like, how is everything closed? The supermarket's closed. Like everything was closed.
Ken, when I was at school, I went to the Gaelic unit. So it was a bilingual, it was a Gaelic medium education. So we were taught through the medium of Gaelic, which is the Scottish language, our native language. And so for our school exchange, we went up, instead of going to Germany or France, which is what most kids did when they went on their school exchange, we went up to the Isle of Lewis, right, which is one of the Western Isles up in the north of off the northwest of Scottish coast. Excuse me. So you've got like Skye, you've got Lewis, North Uist, South Uist, and we went to Lewis, and I stayed with this girl who was from a really religious family, and on Lewis they like chain up the swings on a Sunday.
What?
Like, you're not allowed to watch TV. You're not allowed to answer the phone. You're not allowed to play games. You're not allowed to, they chain up the swings. You're not supposed to have guests around. Like they were really, really strict.
Jeez.
Yeah, I know. And that was like, 30 years ago.
I wonder if they're still doing it.
I don't know. They're still pretty.
I want to find out. I will say there's an ad on page 46 that is the aesthetic of my soul. And it is the most 80s looking ad I've ever seen in my life. It's for sure solid deodorant. And it's just like 50s via 80s sort of supermodel. Yep. Oh, it's just amazing.
And it's got that sort of that print, that sort of style with the little dots in the background going around it. And actually it almost looks like emojis on it. The love hearts and the...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it weirdly would work now.
Oh, totally. Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's very 80s aesthetic.
It's got that retro, the sort of high-waisted trouser and the white PVC. Is it white? I don't know. I'm looking at black and white.
Looks like it, yeah. It's weird because like this, it really doesn't fit in with anything else in this magazine. The ad aesthetic is very 70s, and then this is like, it's 86.
I know, it's strange, isn't it? It's like suddenly they caught up with where we actually are. Yeah,
just one ad. Everything's really
it would absolutely work now. So maybe we should get in touch with Shure and go, guys.
I think that's
save you some cash.
That's my vision board for 2021. That ad. That's the world I want to live in.
Oh, me too. God,
go back there. So Monday, anything on there?
Okay, so Bank Holiday Monday. Once again, sorry, but we're going to apparently get up at 6:15 to watch the Wide Awake Club Bank Holiday special.
So this is Bank Holiday's a long weekend for people that don't know, and so they're doing a special a thing that would normally be on Saturday mornings is now on this Monday morning because everyone has the day off.
Yes, so it keeps us occupied, us children occupied. So it's so the banks are shut and everyone's off work. I've never understood bank holidays, but so that would have been on. So we would have just sit and lounged around going, yes, we're off school, watching cartoons and watching Timmy Mallet smashing children over the head with a hammer, which is always fun. And then in the evening, what did I get? Well, I would definitely, I'd watch What's My Line? So
yes.
So that is like a panel game show. I think, in fact, there's a US version. Was it maybe from the US version?
It started in the 1940s on television
Yes.
in the US, and then it was off the air by the 60s, but for some reason, the UK version ran like another 25 years.
Right. But I actually think the American one might have been like the longest running, like, primetime network game show. I think it might have been.
It's possible, yeah. I love the old ones. The old ones are online now still, and they're just so fun.
Yeah, so they would have like celebrities, and they had to guess what person did for a job.
Right,
and,
by line, line of work. Is what they meant. Yeah,
exactly.
It's
but
like 20 questions basically. Yeah.
But again, panel game show. I'm interested in a professional sense, as well as Eamon Andrews was the host of that until I think he died. And then it was somebody else took over. And he used to also host This Is Your Life. Now, did you have that in America?
We did, but again, that was a show that I think ended in the 50s and was hosted by Groucho Marx for a while.
Really? Wow,
Yeah.
that's incredible. It was quite the show. It was like basically being invited to your own funeral. And it was, This Is Your Life. You had a big red book and would go through your career, and they would bring on guests and people from throughout and it was all a surprise. It was a sort of like surprise birthday party type of thing.
You'd hear their voice first. It would be like,
Yes.
I remember Julia from school, and be like, oh, who is it? It's Mrs. Smith, you know.
Yeah.
Come out, yeah.
Remember when I used to ping your brass strap in maths? And you'd be like, oh no, not that guy. But
I hit you with a mallet on television.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, it was Eamon Andrews was quite the staple of our television screens, and was like very well known. And I remember we did in primary school, like this must have been like primary 2 or something, we did our own version of This Is Your Life for Captain Cook, and I played Eamon Andrews, so I was the sort of MC of this terrible children's play. So I feel this sort of affinity with Eamon Andrews because I played him once age 6.
I'm sure very well. I'm sure you did it very well.
Yes, and that's where I really got, was bitten by the bug of wanting to be a presenter. But so that was the Bank Holiday Monday. There's not.
It's pretty quiet.
Blockbusters! Oh, there was a new series of Blockbusters with Bob Holness. Did you have Blockbusters?
It was called something different. It's the card one, right? Is that the card one? No.
No, it was like a screen, and it looked like a honey, like a beehive, like a.
Oh yes, that was called Classic Concentration
Honeycomb.
here.
Right,
So
you had to get across. And you say, "Can I have a pee, please, Bob?" And then you had to answer a question with that letter.
No, that was Scrabble. That was Scrabble here. Yeah, and
was
you'd have
it?
to.
Okay.
Yeah, you'd have to get the words. You'd have little tiles, and they'd flip them over.
Well, there weren't tiles. It was sort of a little bit more groovy looking than that. You had to get across. You had to get from one end to the other, almost like Connect Four. But you had to answer the letters based on the letters that the answer would begin with that letter.
I see. So it was almost like
Anyway.
a super crossword puzzle game.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we had that here.
No, Blockbusters was an absolute classic. I watched that every day. When I was at boarding school, I watched that every single day.
My favorite UK game show that we just didn't have here is Bullseye.
Oh, Bullseye. Oh, brilliant. God.
You have
Jim
a
Bowen.
professional dart player that you're paired with.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
you-
darts is the most ridiculous of all the quote-unquote sports.
It's amazing. And it looks
it's
like
one-
a guy who plays darts in a pub. Like they're all like a guy with a beer.
100%, yeah. It's absolutely brilliant. But the sort of, and the prizes they had on that were excellent. They would give away like speedboats, and you're like looking at the person, you're like, that person is never gonna, never been anywhere near a speedboat, and lives in the centre of London. Anyway, but we've had some great quiz shows and great game shows. I'm sure as you have as well. Quite a lot of them overlap.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Family Feud, and which I think was Family Fortunes. Price is Right was over there.
Price is Right, classic one. Yeah.
Wheel of Fortune, I think you had a version.
Yeah.
But there's Blockbuster. You'd answer. I mean, Bullseye. You'd answer a question, and then when you get like points, that allowed your dart guy to throw a dart. Like that was.
Yeah.
And you'd get. Yeah. I love that.
I mean, throwing darts was quite integral.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. But I love that the contestant didn't throw a dart.
No.
You had like a designated dart thrower.
Yeah.
Which is
it was
just
a strange
weird.
game.
It's like, you got a point, so this guy's going to bowl for you.
Yeah, it wasn't a glamorous. Darts player is never particularly glamorous. Let's be honest.
It's wonderful. So
yeah, that was probably that for me. I don't know whether I would not watch the Benny Hill show because that's not my kind of thing.
And that was the biggest UK show in the US for years.
Totally. I know.
There's a thing on here with Vincent Price that I would watch, and it's a show called Splash in Tinseltown. And it's hosted by a guy named Nick Freddo, and it says, in the last of the Splash specials from America, Nino Ferretto hits Los Angeles, the city that claims to be the entertainment capital of the world. I love that they go, claims to be the entertainment capital of the world. And Vincent Price is a guest, and then there's a photo of Vincent Price, like, strangling the host.
God, yeah.
It's pretty great. It's pretty great. So I would have watched that.
Well, good for you. I might have too. Now that you brought that more to my attention.
I'm a big Vincent Price guy. So where were we? Wednesday? Anything?
Midweek wasn't really great for TV.
Yeah, in August and the summer.
You would watch your soaps. Yeah,
this looks like an educational night.
There's Take the High Road, which was like a Scottish, again another sort of soap, and that was good because it was Scottish, you know, and we take sort of pride.
I like that it says, who is going to tell Brian about the true nature of his singing voice?
What high drama.
Yeah.
The jeopardy is real. So there's that. And then, but in terms of evening stuff to watch.
Yeah, it looks slim.
I think slim. I probably would almost certainly have watched Let's Face It at 10 p.m. on Channel 4. And it is about facial disfigurement.
That's what it's called? Oh my God, it is. I'm looking at it now. Oh my
and again,
God.
it's about people whose face have been reconstructed by plastic surgery. So yeah, I think I would have been sort of drawn to that because, you know.
Oh my God. And so I'm going to read, the thought of a facial disfigurement is a nightmare to us all. The face is a sensitive and expressive part of the body by which we communicate.
In case you didn't know that.
What's a face? But it seems that once it is severely damaged, other more basic human emotions like the will to live take over. 2 years ago on Channel 4, Christine Piff, a former face cancer patient, which I didn't know face cancer was a thing, launched a self-help network. Tonight's follow-up program tells the story of two members of the network. Man, and you can send for a free fact sheet. There's an address.
Maybe if you too have been affected by facial disfigurement. But you know, I find that sort of thing fascinating. Actually, anything plastic surgery and particularly reconstructions, not plastic surgery for the sake of vanity, but you know, people who've had some kind of either some congenital thing or who've had a tumor removed and then they've rebuilt. I just think absolutely fascinating how they managed to do that.
Or that face transplant, that woman whose face got ripped off by a chimpanzee.
No, unbelievable.
Chimpanzee will rip your face off. That's what they do.
Don't mess with chimpanzees.
No. I still can't believe that's called Let's Face It. There's a thing.
But does that not make you want to watch it? Like,
I mean, it does. To be honest, it does. Because it sounds very serious.
I know. It's funny about the descriptions in these because some of them are really detailed and like there it tells you what a face is, but some of them give you absolutely some of them give you absolutely no information. You're like, what even is this show, you know? I'm picturing the
editor getting the copy and going, hey, you're going to have to add some stuff about what a face is here because I don't think people are going to know.
Yeah.
Can you add a couple lines about
it's
what
like
a face
you
is?
get the minimum of some shows. Like on Thursday at 12:30, The Sullivans, which again was another Australian soap that we if you were off sick, you were like, yes, you got to watch. What was it called? What was it called? Flying Doctor, which was another Australian one, the Sullivans. So you got to watch all of these trashy Australian soaps that if you were at school you didn't see because they were daytime telly. But all it says is a fire at the Kaufmans jeopardizes Jim's deal. I mean, it doesn't. What does that mean? Like that doesn't really tell you anything. It's like
you don't need to know. Don't worry about Jim's deal.
So much assumed knowledge there, but. I don't know whether you used to do this as well, but when you watched Neighbours, you would get the Radio Times for the coming week, and you basically could work out what was going to happen, like because they inadvertently put spoilers in the descriptions of the show for that day, so you could it was like sort of traveling into the future.
Would you try to pretend to your friends that you just knew?
No, I just liked having the information. I also am very impatient. You know, when I was reading a book when I was younger, I'm better now. I don't do this anymore. But if it was a whodunit or a thriller, sometimes I couldn't bear it. So I would go to the end of the book and read the last page, and then I would go back and read the book because I couldn't bear the tension.
Yeah. I mean, that's why a show like Columbo was sort of comforting, because those shows would show you who did it in the beginning.
It started with it, and then we would see if we could catch him.
Yeah, it was all about the process.
Invariably, he did.
Yes. It was like, I'm not scared about them finding it. It's just, I know they'll get there. It's just, let's enjoy the ride.
Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, that was, and you know, another thing this reminds me of, because my dad had this collection of Radio Times when I was a teenager. Now, I don't know if this was like a real job or if this was one of these things that my parents arranged for me to do just to fill my time and to make me feel useful. But I was asked to write, you know, the little EPG description that you get on, you know, on the when the show's on TV and the little you hit information and it describes it.
The electronic guide or CFAX.
The electronic program guide. So for some channel was putting up all this archive of old TV shows and they didn't have the information. And so they got me to literally sit and go through the Radio Times and then write down, copy out what the description was for that episode.
Sounds like heaven.
Well, yeah, it was okay. It was all right. It was quite tedious, but it was quite fascinating as well because you got to you were like, oh, I quite fancy finding out what happens in that show. It sounds exciting.
I mean, one of the things I love about doing this show in the world we live in now is that, like, all the things we're looking at that are interesting to us, there's a very good chance we can find them on the internet and watch them.
Yeah.
Which is
we were like last night we were talking about an advert for the Yellow Times. The Yellow Pages, not the Yellow Times. Sorry, my brain's getting confused. But the Yellow Pages, which is, you know, the phone book.
The phone book,
yeah. But it's not the phone book because the phone book was the phone book and the Yellow Times, the Yellow Pages.
It's a business phone book, yeah.
Yes. And they had these iconic TV adverts probably in the 80s. There's one about J.R. Hartley. Do you remember that one? Did you ever see that?
No.
So he's this little old guy, this really lovely old man, like a grandfather old man, and he's going around. He's going into libraries and he's going, excuse me, do you have Fly Fishing by J.R. Hartley? And they look and they sadly shake their head no. They go into another bookshop and they go, hello, can you help me? I'm like, J.R. Hartley. And they'd shake their heads and you'd see him do this at another couple of places, sad music playing. And then eventually he goes home and his daughter's like, how did you get on? And he shakes his head. And then he's sat down in this comfy chair and he's opened up the Yellow Pages and he's looking through bookshops and he's letting his fingers do the work. Do the walking, right? So he's calling around and eventually he gets one and he goes, do you have a copy of J.R.? And they go, yeah, you do? Oh, could you reserve it for me? And he says, yes. The name, it's J.R. Hartley. And it was like, it was his book and he was trying to just find someone that had his book and it was the saddest thing. But
so
it was
sad.
It's so sad. But it was so memorable. Everybody in this country, I think, my age, would know, if you said J.R. Hartley, they would know exactly what you were talking about.
Oh, I bet so many people like check into hotels under that name and stuff.
Yeah. And then there was another one. There was another one about French polisher, and it was these young kids whose parents were away and they'd had a party and there was a scratch on the table and they had to get a French polisher to come around and fix it. And we were talking about it, and my boyfriend was saying, what was it that happened? There was something at the end where he got the table polished in time, but then all of a sudden there was something else that he hadn't managed, and we were like, what was it? So we found it. Yeah, we found it on YouTube, and it was, he looked across and on this painting on the wall, this old-fashioned portrait, somebody had drawn like a moustache on this portrait of the old lady. We're like, yeah, that's what it was. And then that led us into this total wormhole of watching adverts from the 80s, iconic adverts from the 80s, that lines that you're burned in your memory forever. These commercials,
of course.
They did such a good job.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they do. I've explored some of those UK ones, like the Smash Robot one is very strange to me.
That was granules for mashed potato, which I believe you can still buy.
Yeah, like powdered mashed potatoes, and it's this robot for some reason.
Yes, for mash get smash. Yeah, that was the tagline. Yeah.
Very good.
It was an amazing time. And then there was one that was a series of them, and it was for the Prudential Bank, and it would have
based in Boston, by the way.
Oh, is it? Okay. Yeah. And the tagline was, whatever you want to be in life, you want to be with Prudential. And so they had a series of them, you know, it's like different people in different situations, like, I want to be inside. It was like raining. And this little kid boy kicked a ball and he went, I want to be John Barnes, who was a famous footballer at the time. And I was like, just watching them, it was, I mean, they were all deeply sexist, but,
of course.
Because the girls were like, I want to be a princess.
I want to be the world's best vacuumer.
Exactly. Something like that. So, but we got sucked in, and that's absolutely true. You can find anything you can imagine, like Terrahawks that we were talking about earlier.
Yep.
I bet you could find that on YouTube right now, and you can
easily.
see how terrifying. What was the name? Can you remember what the name of the sort of witchy-looking woman was? Like Esmeralda.
Mira was like, it was underwater, right? So she was like a sea princess.
In space? No.
Terrahawks is in space. I'm thinking of what's the underwater one that he did? Oh my God! It's not Supercar. It's not obviously not Thunderbirds.
Thunderbirds?
Not Thunderbirds.
No.
I can't remember. There was another one that's underwater, and there's this like weird, creepy. She's like a mermaid.
Oh, there's not a girl that's mute. Does she not? She doesn't speak.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah. Horrifying.
What was that? Oh no, that's gonna. Zelda, by the way, was the name of the woman that I've just remembered.
Oh yes, yes.
If you Google Zelda and Terrahawks, you'll be like, oh, they'd let children watch this? That's the stuff of nightmares. But yeah.
Yeah. And Jerry Anderson was an English guy, and the weird thing is they made those shows to try to make them look like they were made in America and then imported to the UK, but they weren't.
So weird.
Because they thought it would be easier to sell them as like a fake American show.
Yeah, well, do you know what they filmed? There was another soap here that they sort of filmed in that way. It's a Scottish soap called River City, and they changed the style of it like after it had been going for a couple of years, and they shot it like it was an American soap. And I don't know why they did that, because the whole point of it was that it was a local Scottish soap, but like the style of it completely changed. And then they sort of went, oh no, this doesn't work, and they changed it back again. And I don't know why they would do that.
I wonder if they were going to try to export it, like dub it and export it.
Maybe that would make sense.
Thursday night, the thing with the witches is on, and I now want to watch it because it's a 3-part series called 3 Sovereigns for Sarah. But my favorite part is the magistrate who is waging war on witches is played by one of my all-time favorites, Patrick McGoohan, who gets angry like nobody.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Okay, yeah, I'm on board with that one. That's 9:30, so we can watch that together.
Yeah,
although we need to rethink. Yeah, third and final part. So let's hope we didn't miss the other two.
I mean, I could probably
There'll probably be a recap.
Yeah, and I could fill in the gaps for you just from being from here. But I could catch up. But just McGoohan in a wig yelling at witches seems like just a
fantastic.
Good time. Yeah.
Yeah. And that the whole witchcraft, that's fascinating. So yeah, I'm on board with that one as well. Is there anything else from that day? Well, I mean, they've got another out of school, which is the writing of Spitting Image.
Yes.
Again,
which I
think
might be the same one.
Oh, is it? Is
it's
it repeated?
Repeating it, yeah. Which would happen sometimes in the UK, which weirded me out.
Yeah, we just didn't have enough TV shows to fill the day.
Same shows on twice in 1 week. Okay.
Yeah. Oh no, here we are. A Tale of the Stars?
Oh yes. Okay. That sounds interesting.
Yes, doesn't it? Okay, so humorous documentary, which is you've got me with that about a reality that lives on selling dreams. In the past, the Hotel Montecito in the center of Hollywood saw all the glamorous stars. Now it's the home for those who dream of stardom. Like David Pack, a young man guided by the spirits. He sounds fun, but the real star of the show is the hotel lift. Ooh, ...
Like it's a cliffhanger.
Yes, nothing like an ellipsis to keep you absolutely hooked on what's going to happen next. So I would watch that. Hotel of the Stars. I mean, aren't there some amazing TV shows that we've never knew existed and would never have even known about if we hadn't read this
gone through this
TV guide from 1986. I might actually have to Google that, the Hotel Montecito.
Yeah, I actually really want to see that. Like mid-80s Hollywood and people trying to like that sounds exactly what I mean,
it sounds slightly sad and depressing, but in a good way, you know? Like, I want to be a fly on that wall.
Yeah.
So,
Ghosts told me to be an actor, and I live in this flophouse hotel now.
Yeah, I can't understand why it's not working out for me.
No.
People keep saying I'm creepy. I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, just because I sleep in an elevator, all of a sudden I'm the weird one.
Yeah. And I dress like a character from the 1800s. What's wrong with that? Yeah. Anyway, so there was...
Thursday might be the pick of the week just from those two.
And so often Thursday nights are the best nights, and comedy clubs as well. I don't know what it's like in America, but we like when you do the Stand, which is like the best comedy club in the country, and just happens to be a Scottish one. Well, they've got one in Newcastle as well. well, but there's one in Edinburgh, one in Glasgow, one in Newcastle. And when you do the weekends, you do a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's the same lineup, and you never quite know which is going to be the best night. Because it's more expensive on a Saturday night, but Saturday night is a lot of pressure on Saturday night.
Yeah, Friday night is the worst usually for me.
Yeah, for drunk people, because they finish work and they're like, oh Jesus, and they get too pissed, and it's
they have a chip on their shoulder too. They're kind of like, oh, you think you're funny? Make me laugh. I had a bad day. But Thursday is like the hardcore, like those are the fans come out on a Thursday.
Yes, they're the proper comedy literate ones that are really into it, and that they know that they're getting a good show for like less money, so they're prepared to come out on a Thursday night for it. So Thursday nights, there you go. It's a good night. And it used to be a student night as well when I was a student. Did you go to university?
I did. I went to Northeastern University here, but then I finished at Goldsmiths in London.
Oh, nice. What did you study?
I studied TV radio production.
Good for
which
you.
I don't really do. Well, I guess I kind of do it now.
Well, that's vaguely relevant to what you do.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I studied law.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So. Yeah, I started pre-med and then was like, no.
Yeah, well, I started doing politics and psychology, and then I switched to law because I was like, what am I going to do with that degree? And then I was like, why am I doing this? I think I'd watched, it was too much like LA Law. I thought it was going to be
It's not
fun.
Glamorous. Yeah, it's a lot of paperwork and reading.
It's just a lot of remembering dates and cases and regurgitating it. It's very boring. But Thursday nights were student nights where when you went out in town, they did all the best deals on booze, and that's when the nightclubs were, absolutely rampacked with other students. It was so much fun on a Thursday night.
Pound a pint night or something like that.
A pound for a vodka and mixer, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, Alco Pops.
Good times. Then come home and watch a documentary about a weird hotel.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then Friday, the final night of the week. What'd you do?
Friday.
There's a lot of American shows on Friday, I noticed.
Yeah, there's quite a lot to choose from. Murder, mystery, suspense. So that's obviously going to be, and it's Skyway to Death, which is enticing.
Yep.
The description is it's a film. Carload of passengers on an aerial tramway starts the return trip from the mountain station. What do you think's going to happen, guys? You think they're going to get down safely?
And it took 30 minutes and it was fine.
yeah. And Skyway to Death was a red herring.
Yeah.
9,000 feet above sea level, it suddenly comes to a halt. Yes, count me in for that. If there's booths for play your cards right, I would not be watching that.
He's beloved, but I just...
is
ugh.
dead. Is he not dead now? I think he died.
I think he's dead. Yeah, he's dead.
Yeah, I think he just died like last year. But he was... that's terrible that I don't really know. He was absolutely like TV royalty and very cheesy and a big chin and did
big mustache.
Yeah, and the show that you have, Dancing with the Stars, which is called Strictly. He was host of that because he used to do the Come Dancing, which was the show back in the day in a ballroom, which was actual ballroom dancing, but it wasn't with celebrities, which it is now.
Right.
Anyway, but yeah, he was very beloved, and I never got it.
Me either. Like people, because he had like catchphrases and the whole audience is yelling.
Nice
like,
to see you, nice.
Yeah, and he's got like these like special mugging he would do and be like, and I was like, I don't get it.
No, not into that at all.
No,
that is
no.
not for me.
No.
Oh, the Golden Girls.
Yeah.
Love the Golden Girls. I still love the Golden Girls. What a
This is
great
a good
show.
one too.
What can you imagine that getting made now? Okay, so give me the pitch. Okay, so wait, what? It's like
It would be Sex in the City
women.
now. Yeah.
It's these old ladies, these old sarky or slightly slutty old ladies.
Yeah.
They would never get, they've like literally got a blue rims,
Yeah, and it was amazing. It was amazing too because the sort of economics of it was these old women have to live together because they can't afford to live on their own because their husbands, like it was all this sort of interesting dynamic as well.
Yeah, it was really quite a feminist show.
Yeah.
Like it really was. These old ladies that share a house in Florida, but they're all like such great characters. I mean, what an amazing show to be cast in. It's absolutely iconic. So the Golden Girls for sure. I would watch that. I would watch that now if it was on TV.
Yep.
If it came on, I would be like, oh yeah, Golden Girls, I'll watch this. I would not obviously watch the Cosby Show now. I probably would have watched it back then, but not now.
It's such a shame that that show has been ruined by him being a monster, because it's actually such a great, funny, sweet show.
Yeah, and a slice of that time in life. Mm-hmm.
And the ensemble cast is great. And it's like obviously there's worse things he did than ruining a show, but it's just like, man.
I know.
That's
Everything's
awful.
tainted, but then it's like Louis C.K.,
Yeah.
like, he was one of my favorites, and, went to see him live a couple of years ago in Edinburgh, and just what a fantastic show. He was so good, and now I just can't enjoy it anymore.
Well,
I can't, it's ruined.
It was like a personal, like I know Louis or knew him, and he's from Boston, and he would come work out
Do you
material.
gig with him?
Oh yeah, on my Thursday night show he'd come, and actually he was shooting a movie with Ricky Gervais here, and then they would come down at night and do sets. And one night Louis was like, "Oh, my friends have never seen me do stand up. Can I come down to your show?" And I'm like, "Sure." And his friends were Ben Affleck and Jennifer Garner.
Okay.
It was very
that's
weird,
fine.
yeah.
I think we could squeeze them in.
Yeah, but just the sort of betrayal.
Isn't it such a shame? Yeah, it really feels like a betrayal, especially with him.
Yeah,
because I felt like he painted himself as being such the opposite of that, and like being self-aware and just
even for people that knew him, it was like that.
Yeah, and I especially feel for Pamela Adlon, who, by the way, her show Better Things is fantastic.
Yeah,
Have you
she's
seen
great.
It? Yeah,
she's great.
She's so good, and I really felt for her as well, because that show Better Things was co-written, I think, with Louis, and so his name came up at the beginning. I thought, I hope this doesn't get spoiled for her because of him. And
he produced like Tig Notaro's stuff and like other people that.
Oh yeah.
Now they get his
Tig also fantastic. But do you know who my favorite comedian of all time is?
Let's hear it.
Maria Bamford.
Maria's great. Yep, done shows with Maria.
I love her so much.
Yeah,
I love her so much.
She's just amazing, and she's exactly like
Old Baby. I was watching it again the other day. It still makes me like properly laugh out loud from start to finish.
Yeah,
and I think it's so clever and so good. But then I love there's so many great American comics, and Sarah Silverman's Specky Dust, amazing as well. And I was even watching Amy Schumer's special, and I don't even particularly like her, but I thought it was actually pretty good. So there's lots of good comedy.
Yeah, you
don't need to. There's lots of people who aren't sex pests.
Yes, that's
that we can still enjoy. Is what I'm saying.
We don't need him. I always say he had 10 years of a career on borrowed time, and he's lucky he got that and to put out stuff there. And now we get plenty of other good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's going to be a better time, and hopefully that's the hope. Hopefully we'll clean things out, but I don't know. It seems to be like we're having another moment in that sense over here, and over where you are as well, in terms of a sort of second wave of Me Too, and it's sort of very depressing and sad, but at the same time you sort of think, well, could we really actually change now? And maybe this pandemic has given us an opportunity to reflect and really take a deep, long, hard look at ourselves and the things that we maybe didn't have time to think about, or we were too distracted to think about properly, and Black Lives Matter and all that kind of stuff, that we're like, actually, is this who we are and who we want to be as a society? And we can hit the reset button now, we can rebuild and make things better. So maybe that's the silver lining that comes out of all of this time, that we've had a chance to properly reflect and look at our own prejudices and look at, how people are being treated, and have our eyes open to that in a way that we didn't before, because there was too much else just, going on and distracting us.
We're being forced to go to our room and think about what we did.
Yes, exactly.
And also like the Me Too stuff where, that's been I had Rose McGowan on a year before the Weinstein stuff came out, and she named all the names on my show, and the emails I got. But
did you put it out?
Oh yeah. I asked her, and she's like, "No, fuck him." But no one cared. And then when it all came out, it was like the only interview. So I was.
Well, that's like the Cosby is like, he was accused, and it wasn't until a man.
Everybody
Hannibal.
knew.
Yeah, but it wasn't until a man got up on stage with a microphone and called him out until it actually things started to happen. And you think, well, that's.
I'm glad it happened, but why did it have to take that? Yeah. Well, I think the one thing I think is great about, great's not really the right word, but the thing that protects all these guys is they make somebody money. That's like the bottom line. I mean, it's more complicated than that, but like that's the big thing. And with the pandemic, nobody's making anyone money. So they're not touring comedians. They're not somebody's, meal ticket. So they're vulnerable now. It's like they have a chink in the armor.
There's less, there's less to lose. For I think also for women calling out men, and certainly it's happening over here too, is it because we're not actually gigging just now and we're not going to be in green rooms and nobody's getting booked for any gigs.
You're not going to be blacklisted.
You're not going to lose. Yeah, you're not going to lose a gig. Yeah. And you're not going to have to worry about being in a green room with someone because no one, that's just not happening.
There's no green room
right now.
Yeah. And I'm like, burn it down, man, and then we'll come out of this better. That's what I think it'll be.
I really hope so.
Because I have had to slap around a lot of dudes in my time for being scumbags, and as fun as that is, I'm getting a little old for it. And it doesn't always help. But
true.
Thank you for doing this. It's been awesome talking to you. You're my first over the ocean episode.
I feel very privileged.
yes. So this is modern technology really is making us all closer together. Is there anything you watch now? Like, is there a comfort show you've been going to during pandemic, or something that you just like your chill out show?
Well, like I said, I watched Dynasty. I watched Queer Eye. Obviously, that's a good one to sort of fill you up. Although I think the latest last series is not as good as previous ones.
Yeah.
But don't know. What else? We've just sort of worked our way through stuff like Succession. We just finished yesterday. I'm one of these people, I just forget, like, as soon as I finish something, I'm like, next, my brain
purged.
And like, do you know, I'm like this when I read a book. Like 2 days after I've read a book, I could not tell you the name of the main character in the book. It's just that my brain goes, don't need that information anymore, dump it.
Well, then you can read it again, and it's like the first time.
Well, I know I've done that, and I've gotten to I'm like on a page 125, and I'm like, hang on a second.
I'm not as smart as I thought I was. I read this before.
I've already read this book. Yeah. So, but yeah, in terms of like, there's a show here. I don't know if you get it in America called Killing Eve.
Oh yes, yep, we get that.
I watched that. That was good and funny. And yeah, I mean, I haven't really been watching anything nostalgic. I know that a lot of people have been getting right into nostalgia.
Yeah.
But I have not really. I'm not really like that. Like, you know, we'll look up like TV commercials from the 80s, but I don't think I would really want to watch something old.
Well, it sounds like you didn't watch it. You didn't really watch it then. So
no,
it's like
I really didn't really watch it then. It's like I don't really like watching black and white films. I know that sounds really stupid, but I don't know. It's like my brain's like, we can do better.
Yeah, some people it is an instant turn off because they're like, I can't. My suspension of disbelief doesn't allow for this.
Yeah, sort of, and even though like I'll go and see a play and I love going to the theater and everything, but there's something about the intimacy of that's different.
Yeah.
But I can go and suspend my disbelief to, you know, the absolute nth degree. But yeah, I don't know. There's something about black and white TV. It feels like too old fashioned.
Right.
Like I've been spoiled by, you know, big telly 4K, you know, HD.
It's like trying to read Beowulf. It's in Middle English and you're like, this is too much work.
This is old fashioned. This can't be good. And you're like, well, maybe it's worth sticking with it, you know.
But there's other things you
go off and
do.
Read James Joyce or something. That's what I should do. Just try and train my brain to be a little bit more open to old stuff. But yeah, no, I like fun, like, you know, The Good Place was so sweet.
Oh, yes.
I actually watched that again with my son, and he really, really enjoyed it. And like Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, really enjoyed that. And again, I watched the whole thing again with my son, and he loved that. So that was nice. And we've been watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Again, I watched that. That's another thing that I can watch. My son's 12, so he's at that age where...
It's age appropriate.
It's kind of, mostly. I mean, it's sometimes not, but, you know, showbiz children.
You're giving him an education.
Yeah, exactly. He knows not to repeat some of the language, but...
Julia, it's not like you're putting him in period costume and making him play a child in Canada in the 1800s.
Exactly. I am a better parent than my mother, so it's all that matters. So
you're winning. You're winning.
I'm winning.
Well, thank you so much, and it's been great talking to you. And maybe I'll get back over to the UK sometime the apocalypse ends and we're all alive and do stand up again.
Yes, and you must come and do it in Glasgow, your ancestral
Yes.
home.
I know. I have to see my Reed ancestral home.
Do you know whereabouts in Glasgow they were from?
My dad knows, but I don't know. It's funny. My dad. So I never met my great grandparents, but my dad is like, as a kid, my dad says, I literally never understood a single word my grandfather said my whole life. Like he never
Sounds
got a
about
word.
right, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I love it. It's great. But I don't know where. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you should come and not be able to understand a word that anyone's saying, just so to get that experience for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll make me feel in touch with my roots.
Good. Cool. I hope so.
Oh, baby, I see you in my TV set. Yeah, baby, I see you in my TV set. I cut your head off and put it in my TV set.
There you go. That's Julia. Please follow her on all social media. She is great on Twitter, especially. Listen to her shows. You can watch her stand up and things online. She's really great. And it was great to talk to her. Next week, I'll have another person who's great to talk to, as I do each and every week, and as I have each and every week since 2014, which is pretty insane. I did this show for most of my 30s. I've been doing this show for longer than I went to high school, 50% more time than I went to high school. You don't need these statistics. These are just the things I think of in my own head because I am in my house with dogs. Anyway, we'll see you next week. So I know you'll be here. I trust you. But if you're not, if you have something else going on, that's fine too. You know, I'm not going to hunt you down. But anyway, I'll be here. So I'll be here next week for a brand new edition of TV Guidance Counselor.
There's lots of people who aren't sex pests.
Yes, that's
that we
the
can
thing.
still enjoy.